So yesterday we were talking about the discriminant, and we talk about some solutions that some of them were imaginary solutions, some of them were real solutions. But for today, we're going to learn actually how to use a quadratic formula and come up with those solutions that we talked about yesterday. Now, to begin with, what I need on my equations is I need everything on one side of the equation. So on one side of my equal sign, and on the other side, it's equal to 0. I can see numbers 29 and 30. I see everything. It's on the left side. I can see number 29. I have p squared minus 8p minus 128. It is equal to 0. Like I said, I need the right side equal to 0. But I see numbers 31 and 32. They're not equal to 0. But I do need them equal to 0. So we're going to play with those in a minute. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to talk about the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula, we have it as x is equal to, I'm going to come up with two solutions for x, and it's going to be negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, and all of this over 2a. Remember, we talked about what's a, b, and c yesterday. So looking at my values here for number 29, I'm going to say my a is 1 because it's the number in front of the p squared. My b is going to be negative 8, and my c is going to be negative 128. Now, the reason why I had you guys work on the discriminant yesterday is because that's the hard part of the quadratic formula. So let me start with that. Let me start with the discriminant. So I remember the discriminant was b squared minus 4ac. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go a negative of a negative 8 plus, minus, b squared, my bad. B squared is negative 8 squared. Negative 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times a negative 128. Remember, we're looking at b squared minus 4ac. So I'm just looking at negative 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times a negative 128. Now, negative 8 squared. So negative 8 times negative 8, that's positive 64, right? Because negative times negative is positive. So positive 64. And then when it comes to negative signs, I see these two negative signs. And I said when the amount of negatives is an even amount, which in this case is an even amount, I'm going to write that as a plus. And then I'm just going to multiply my numbers. 4 times 1 times 128. So that gives me 512. Well, 64 plus 512, I know that is 576. And then the square root of that, because I remember for discriminant, I have to do the square root. And I know the square root of 576 happens to be 24. Do use a calculator. So I happen to get that my discriminant, my square root was 24. So positive, so I expect two answers. So now let me change this to blue. Looking at my formula, negative b. So the first thing I have to do is negative b. My b is negative, negative 8. So the negative of a negative, isn't that just positive, right? The negative of a negative. So I'm going to write this as 8, positive 8, plus or minus 24. Because remember, I just did the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And all of this is going to be over 2 times a. But remember how my a is 1? So 2 times 1, I'm just going to call that 2. So this is actually what's going to give me my two answers. One of my values is going to be 8 minus 24 over 2. And my other answer is going to be 8 plus 24 over 2. Now, if I do the minus, 8 minus 24 is a negative 16. Negative 16 over 2 is going to be negative 8. My other answer, 8 plus 24, I know that's 32, and 32 divided by 2 is 16. So my answers are -8 and 16. Looking at if this was a question on our homework will be, there's a space, the word and then there's another space. So I expect you guys to type in both of your answers in there. Now, let me write them from small to large. Negatives are always smaller than positive, so I'm going to write -8. And then my other answer is 16. So my answers are -8 and 16. All right, let's take a look at another example. Looking at example B, number 30. My A value is 5. My B value is -12. And my C value is -32. You guys can see there's my A value, my B value, and my C value with the signs included. It's easy when the right side is equal to 0. Okay, so now I start with my discriminant, B squared minus 4AC. So matter of fact, let me highlight it here in green. So let me start with that. B squared minus 4AC. Since my B is -12, I'm looking at this as -12 squared minus 4 times 5 times a -32. So 4 times A times C. Okay. The exponent first, right? -12 squared. -12 times -12 is positive 144. And then I see this minus and I see this other minus. So two minus signs make it a plus sign. And then I'm going to multiply it 4 times 5 times 32. And that gives me 640. But 144 times 144 plus 640, that gives me 784. And again, the discriminant is the hardest part, so that's why I do that first. 784 is a positive value. I expect my solution to have two answers. So I'll do the square root of 784 happens to be 28. Now, let me change this to blue. So negative B. Remember the first part that I do is negative B. But my B is negative to begin with. So negative of a negative, positive 12 plus or minus 28 all over 2 times A. So I'm going to call this 10. All right, 2 times A, but remember how A is 5, so 2 times 5. So one of my answers is going to be 12 minus 28 over 10. And my other answer is going to be 12 plus 28 over 10. All right, looking at the first one, 12 minus 28, that's -16. So -16 over 10. I'm not going to do this as a decimal. 16 divided by 10 does give me a decimal. So I'm going to leave it as a fraction, but at least simplified. -16 over 10, let me bring the negative to the front. 16 over 10, let me call this 8 over 5. I divided each of my numbers by 2. To make my numbers smaller, I divided each by 2. All right, looking at my second answer, 12 plus 28. Well, that's 40. 40 divided by 10, well, that's 4. Now, this one is not a fraction. It's actually a whole number. So again, I'm going to see two squares or two boxes and the word and in between. So I expect my two answers there. So I'm going to type in the first one, -8 over 5. And my second answer is 4. Okay, so that's not bad. Let's take a look at number 31. First, I have to move everything to the left. The right side is going to equal to 0. So I have 7n squared minus n. Let me leave a space there. And then this positive 55, I'm going to move it to the left side as a minus 55. Don't forget to switch the sign. And then this positive 5n squared, let me move it over here to the left side as a minus 5n squared. Anything you move from the right side to the left side, gotta switch the sign. Now, one thing I want you to notice, I was lining up like terms. The n squares, look, I lined them up together. Those that had the n, and then those that don't have a letter. So when I combine my like terms, I happen to get, let me write this in black. I happen to get 2n squared minus n minus 55 is equal to 0. I want the right side equal to 0 because I can find my values that I need. My A is 2, my B is -1, and my C is -55. Remember how I do my discriminant first? B squared minus 4AC. As a matter of fact, let me even write it down. B squared minus 4 times A times C. So I have -1 squared minus 4 times 2 times a -55. I know -1 squared. So -1 times -1, that's +1. There's two negative signs, so that makes it a plus sign. 4 times 2 times 55, that's 440. I know 1 plus 440 is equal to 441. My discriminant is positive. I expect two real solutions. I even get the square root of 441. I use my calculator. That happens to be 21. This is the hard part. Then I remember my distributive property. The quadratic formula says negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So negative b. Remember how my b was -1? So the negative of a negative, that will give me +1 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, that's 21. I did the hard part first. All of this is over 2 times a. But remember how my a was 2? So 2 times 2 will give me 4. And here I'm going to get my answers. For my first solution is going to be 1 minus 21 all over 4. My second solution is going to be 1 plus 21 all over 4. So looking at my first solution, 1 minus 21. Well, that's -20 over 4. I'll bring the negative to the front. 20 divided by 4 is 5. So this actually becomes a whole integer. So it's not a fraction anymore. For my second answer, I have 22 over 4. Because 1 plus 21, that gave me 22. I know if I grab my calculator, 22 divided by 4 gives me a decimal. So I'm going to leave my answer as a fraction. I don't want decimal, so leave it as a fraction, but at least simplify. What I'm going to do, let me divide each of my numbers by 2 to make my value smaller. So my answer is going to be 11 over 2. Instead of 22 over 4, I'm going to call it 11 over 2. I divided each number by 2 to make my value smaller. Okay, so my answers are here. The first one is -5, and the second one, 11 over 2. Lastly, let's take a look at number 32. Okay, so what I have to do is let me move everything from the right side to the left side. And then here, let me split them through the equal side. So we know what's the left side, what's the right side. Look at my 9k. I'm going to move it over as a minus 9k. Don't forget to switch the sign. My -4k squared, I'm going to move it over as a +4 k squared. Don't forget to switch the sign. When I combine my like terms, I happen to get 6k squared minus 12k minus 90. All this is equal to 0. So that means that my A value is 6, my B value is negative 12, and my C value is negative 90. Kind of big numbers, but we have a calculator, so not a big deal. Let me work my discriminant. Remember the discriminant was B squared minus 4 times A times C. So I have negative 12 squared minus 4 times 6 times a negative 90. So 4 times A times C. I know negative 12 squared is 144. And then these two negative signs make a plus sign here. Then I'm going to multiply 4 times 6 times 90. And that happens to give me 2,160. So I use a calculator. And I know that 144 plus 2,160 gives me 2,304. It's a positive value, so I expect two real solutions. As a matter of fact, the square root of 2,304 happens to be 48. So I did the discriminant, that's the hard part. Remembering our quadratic formula, I start with negative b. Okay, remember how my b was negative 12? So the negative of a negative happens to be positive 12. And then I know I have a plus or minus. My quadratic formula has the square root of b squared minus 4ac. I'm just going to call that 48. Right, that's what I did. I did the hard part first. And I know this is all over 2 times a. So in this case, I'm going to have all over 12. Remember how a was 6? So 2 times 6, that's how I got the 12. So my two answers are going to be, the first one is going to be 12 minus 48 all over 12. And my second solution is going to give me 12 plus 48 all over 12. Okay, let's take a look at the first one. 12 minus 48, I'm just focused on the top. 12 minus 48 gives me negative 36. So I have negative 6 over 12. Let me bring the negative to the front of my fraction. 36 divided by 12 happens to be 3. So my first solution is negative 3. For my second solution, let me do the top first. 12 plus 48, that happens to be 60. So I have 60 over 12. 60 divided by 12 happens to be 5. So my answers, the first one is negative 3, and the second one is 5. As a matter of fact, I even write the word and. So doing the quadratic formula, do the discriminant first. B squared minus 4ac, and obviously get the square root of that. Make sure everything's on the left side and the right side is equal to 0.